This simple reading program had my child reading within weeks after several failed attempts. It was like a miracle happened, and I'm really excited to walk you guys through the step-by-step process for how I personally set up our at-home reading lessons with my daughter. But before we get into that, I am going to warn you, the opening is a little bit chatty because I want to start off with some disclaimers, specifically around developmental hurdles and our personal experience with some speech delays, brain inflammation, and I share that just to show you guys what we overcame and like why I think this program is so miraculous. But there's chapters in the description box below if you want to skip past that. The second part of this video, I'm going to give you guys the 3 things I look for that help me assess my daughter and choose how to plan the reading lesson for the next day. And then finally, I will talk about our step-by-step process for actually structuring an at-home reading lesson using Lovevery's Reading Skills program. It only takes 15 minutes a day, how I personally did our lessons. Of course, you can customize this in any way that you want. If you guys are new here, I have reviewed this reading skills program in the past, including if you were to attempt to self-curate these with Amazon alternatives. Description box below, I will leave a link to those videos, as well as a link to shop the reading skills program and any other things I show in this video. And so let's kick off with the disclaimers because I wanted to share some quick background on our personal, where we were coming from experience. My daughter struggled with a speech delay until she was about 3 years old. We worked with an SLP, and there was some heavy concern around an apraxia diagnosis for her. In combination to that, she also was struggling with something called PANS or PANDAS, which is a neuropsychiatric syndrome resulting in brain inflammation. I'll leave a link to more information for that below. It's not something I wish on anybody. And I share all of this for 2 reasons, because if you met my daughter today, you would never know she struggled with these pretty large things in the past. And I also bring that up because while I wholeheartedly believe in early intervention, I also want to stress the importance of staying calm and grounded as a parent, even though it's like really challenging when you're being told these really big labels and potential diagnoses and stuff. Because, and I know this is just an anecdotal story, but it did give me a lot of to calm down while we were in the midst of our own struggles, which is this idea that the majority of kids, by the time they're 6 or 7 years old, they're all caught up. While we were kind of going through all of that, one of our closest friends was a former first grade teacher, and she would always remind me that by the end of the year, you would not know which students had come in reading and which students had not. So this isn't like a race to get to the end. Obviously, if you have concerns, get your child the appropriate care and help. But I do want to bring this up to stress that the most important things we can do as parents is to just be prepared and to take a deep breath that things are going to be okay. But I digress. She really wanted to learn how to read despite all of this. Like, that was her big goal. And this program, how it's been set up, how we structured the reading lessons, she has absolutely been loving. It has built up her self-confidence so much, and she started progressing like wildfire, unlike anything I had seen. All that's to say also is that speech comes before reading. I really want to stress that because something I forgot to mention in the Lovevery Reading Skill Set Program Part 1 review I did, which is that the games included in that box are just as much speech therapy games as they are reading games. So with the potential apraxia diagnosis, my daughter didn't do a lot of the mimicking of motor movements that would be developmentally normal. When we started to introduce reading and things like that, she was doing a lot of what's called mouth groping, and part 1 of the program really helped shape so much of our at-home reading lessons to overcome those sticky points, which leads me to the last thing, part of my disclaimer spiel I want to make, which is defining what reading is. As a parent, it's really important to understand your definition of reading and then also what an actual age-appropriate definition of reading is. You are reading when you can pick up any early reader book and read that on your own. That is a win. That is reading. It's part of the process, so it's age appropriate. Okay, so now on to assessing your child. I do want to stress the importance of doing this because it really does help you come up with your reading lesson. So I personally assess my kid for where she's at in 3 basic ways. The first one being good old flashcards. So we will flip through it, a pile that she got no problems, a pile that were trickier or she missed, and then the next day we'll start with that pile that she struggled with. Now, a softer alternative to this, and this is what I do with my 3-year-old, is the Lovevery letter case beehive game. So basically it's a little game where they match the uppercase and lowercase letter, and then they say the letter sound, and you build out this little like honeycomb thing. And so one way to kind of keep track when you're assessing your child is you could build the honeycomb. Everything on one side were the ones that got easier, and then everything on the other side are the ones that were trickier. And then when you are packing up the game, you basically just put the ones they got on one side of the board, and then the ones they are still working for on the other side of the board to keep track of their progress. And then the third way is actually while they are reading, and this really comes as they're making the switch from just isolating letter sounds to actual blending. So I'll assess this while we're reading too, and then I will pull out specific games or activities based off of where I saw them struggle, which I will show you guys in the reading lesson, which we're going to get to right now. Started setting up our at-home reading lesson, and this is really what caused us to start flying. I'm going to give you the framework, and then I'm going to go into a lot more detail. I basically start by choosing 1 to 3 books that all focus on the majority of the exact same letter sound, and then I go through Lovevery's reading program and I pull all of the games and I choose just the part of that game that emphasizes those sounds. So they don't have to be the first sound or the end sound. It could be the middle sound. I just want those sounds at the forefront because, again, we're dealing with a long history of just motor delays here. So having her go ahead and connect those sounds repeatedly from her brain into her mouth over and over and over is really the refresher I want her to anchor in before we go any further. And when I pull for the syllable game, what I will always do is use the little green card. When we get that card, I will say what's something that has one of the specific sounds we're working on from that book. So that's kind of like everything I do to prep for it. I know that sounds like a lot of work, but I promise you it literally only takes 5 minutes to set up in the future.
Okay, so here we have our 3 books for the day, a series 1, a series 2, and a series 3 book with overlapping sounds. Not perfectly overlap. I usually, right now, I'm using the vowels to guide the overlap in these. So you can see the O and U vowel, O and U here. I always keep the wooden letter blocks for actually while we're reading the book, so that's not part of our pre-reading games. So over here, these are the games I just pulled those letter sounds for. You can see it's not all of the syllable race card games, it's just some of them. Compound word game, not all of the sheets, just the ones that related. Again, not all the letter slide vowels, just the ones that overlap. 6 games of the mystery word decoder, and these are our reach games right now. So the crossword puzzle and the swap drop. These are going to introduce more complex sounds than what are in just those books over there, which is what makes them our reach games. Sometimes, especially like with the word swap drop, we're going to be getting into letters that we weren't doing, or we're going to be getting into digraphs that we haven't talked about yet. And so those are why they are the challenge games. Those will move up to easier games as we move into part 3. And these are obviously a lot of games. So we have 6 easy games to choose from here. So that's 2 days worth of games and 2 reach games. So all of this took me about 5 minutes to set up. But again, it's 6 easy games, 2 reach games. So that's 2 days worth of work already done. When we actually are sitting down to do our reading lesson, I start by quizzing the letter sounds from the book, sort of like replacing the flashcards from before. And then we start with a warm-up game. This is something really light and easy that's literally just gonna warm up the brain and mouth connection. I often pull like from the part 1 games here because those are super simple. We just want something that's going to get those sounds at the forefront of their head and that connection between their mind and their mouth really flowing. So after we play our initial warm-up game, we read the first book. The warm-up game itself usually only takes under 5 minutes, usually about 3 minutes. I re-quiz the letters and then we jump into reading. If I notice she's getting stuck on the same sound over and over while reading the book, we'll pause the book and we will grab the letter blocks and I will have her go ahead and do the puzzle for that letter sound, and we keep it nearby as an additional visual cue for when she sees that letter in the book and she's struggling, she will go ahead and look at that puzzle, and I have found that helps tremendously. The other thing I also talk to her about is
is reminding her of the book Charlie Learned Something New. I just encourage her that this is right before your brain learns something new. It sometimes gets a little bit frustrating before the glittery feeling. Really helpful for making her realize everybody needs a brain break. It's normal to get tired. It's normal to start making mistakes on something you've already done, as ways to just kind of like manage her expectations and her frustration tolerance. And we just kind of talk through that book. That may sound like the E sound was really tricky today, but I know you had it yesterday. Your brain must be working really hard, like in Charlie Learned Something New. Let's not quit before the sparkly feeling. Here, try finding the E with these blocks. And so having that puzzle nearby acts as a decodable reading moment for when she gets stuck. I will actively watch her looking over at the puzzle and mouthing the different words to herself before she vocally attempts it out loud again. And doing that, she has been flying through this process. On that note of just her hitting walls with different things, she likes to have a notebook nearby during our practices. If she is really struggling with a word or a sound, she likes to write it down. It seems to help her commit it to memory. I don't know where she picked that up, probably at school, but that can also be helpful for different sight words, or like if you're reading a book and the same word is in it over and over again and they're struggling, having them write it down. I don't know. It seems to help. After we finish reading the book, I check in with her and give her the choice if she wants to end for the day or to keep going. If she wants to go on for another book that day, I usually have us pause and play another game that's light, a bit more of a brain break. This could be one of the earlier prepared ones that she didn't choose, or we'll pull something from like the storyteller section of the Reading Skills Set program part 2, so that her brain doesn't get too exhausted, but it still stays in the zone. But if she says she's done reading, she doesn't want to go on to another book for the day, but is willing to do some more practice, we choose one of our more challenging or reach games to close out the session. So this could be the sticky word snack sticks game, which is pretty much memorizing different sight words. Once I told her that these are basically flashcards just on silly vegetable sticks, she was like, oh, okay, because at one point before that, she literally threw her arms up and was saying, these words make no sense. And I was like, I know, that's the point. Having her kind of understand what that game was. Okay, these are not following normal phonics sounds. There's nothing wrong with me. This is just weird. It really helped her. So just kind of throwing that out there. And we have actually gone ahead and, as her reading has progressed, just taken those out and used those as flashcards at times and not even played the game. Eventually, those challenging games will start to move into our easier games as we're progressing and getting into more mastery and challenging concepts. And whatever's in part 3 of the program will become the challenging game. So I like to start off with a really easy warm-up game, and then we go into a book, and then we give the option, do you want to close out the day with a reach game, or do you want to try for another book? If they try for another book, we choose again one of those easier games. Depending on if we are just doing one book for the day, I'd say the practice as a whole takes 15 minutes. If she goes for 2 books or 3 books for the day, it can take up to 30 minutes for sure. And one of my absolute favorite things about this reading program is the amount of repetition it gives you guys in practice. At least this has been our experience, without feeling like you're doing the same exact book or game every single day. So it still feels fresh, even if you are working on the same skills until they've really mastered it, which is a huge win, because that had always been one of my personal biggest complaints in getting my daughter to progress in the reading. I also just love that it focuses on phonological awareness, digraphs. There's just it's really good. It's really comprehensive, and it's made a world of difference. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this. I know this probably sounds like a lot of steps, but once you actually do it, it really is not overwhelming at all. If you guys have actually checked out the Reading Skills program and have it, I'd love to hear your experiences with it in the comments. If you guys have ways to improve what we're doing at home, drop them below too. Until next time, my name's Rachel from Confidently Mom. Be sure to go back, check out my other Lovevery Reading Skill Set reviews. Like this video if it was helpful, subscribe, because I will be doing a dedicated part 2 and part 3 reviews, including how to attempt to self-curate it with alternatives or dupes, just like I did in that part 1 video, which is linked here. And until next time, have a good one.